Pope Leo held a mass in Cameroon today in front of roughly 120,000 people, expected to be the biggest event of his Africa tour. Today marked day 5 of his 11-day journey across the continent and comes as President Trump has continued to criticize the pontiff throughout the week. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay has the latest.
Well, on his first papal trip to Africa, now marked by an open clash with President Trump, there have been more heated words from the first American pope. In what's been widely seen as a commentary on the administration, Pope Leo said that the world is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants. Their simmering differences boiled over earlier this week when President Trump blasted the Pope over his opposition to America's war in Iran. The pontiff responded hours later from the papal plane, stating, "I have no fear of the Trump administration." Now, here in Cameroon, his visit has left locals overjoyed, praying he'll bring peace amid political violence, hunger, and a separatist conflict that's left thousands dead and more than 500,000 displaced. Speaking to them at a mass, Pope Leo blamed, quote, "the masters of war who turn a blind eye to the fact that billions of dollars are spent on killing and devastation. Yet the resources needed for healing, education, and restoration are nowhere to be found." Now, in his clash with President Trump, there has been a chorus of voices supporting Pope Leo, both from inside and outside the Catholic Church. Coming to the defense of President Trump, Franklin Graham, the evangelist and the son of Billy Graham. He said he hopes Pope Leo can meet President Trump in person so that he can thank the president for defending religious liberty. Back to you.
Chris Livesay, thank you. Michelle Borstein joins us now. She's a religion reporter at the Washington Post. President Trump won 54% of the Catholic vote in 2024. How fluid is that voting bloc?
Well, I mean, in the context of what we're talking about, one thing to remember is that Americans have been in this kind of anti-institutional vibe generally. So attacking an institution like the church or the head of the institution is different than it might have been in the past. Like if you think of like Sinead O'Connor ripping up that photo of the Pope. You know, who is an authority? Who gets to say what Christianity is really about? So as you mentioned, the Catholic vote swung to a majority of voters voting for Trump in the last election. That was in good part because of the movement among Latino voters, even though the majority still went for Kamala Harris, but there was a big swing. Of course, there's a lot of things going on in this group, which is the largest faith group in the United States, the Catholic Church. About a quarter of voters are Catholic. Immigration, and there's been a lot of movement among that, especially among Latino Americans. So I think it's hard to say. I mean, I think generally Catholics tend to go a bit the way the country is going. So if people are disapproving of the president, disapproving of what he's doing on immigration, Catholics are likely to feel that way as well. But I think we have to look at this as like a complicated moment where multiple things are true when it comes to religion and politics, in part because of this kind of lessening of the authority of institutions.
I want to ask you a follow-up on that. Do you believe that is also true, given that the current Pope is American, and it feels like there has been sort of a galvanizing of Americans to religion?
Yes. I mean, I'm always cautious to see how things are going to go. I'm, more reporter than predictor. But I mean, you're right. First of all, this Pope is extremely popular, especially among Catholics. But Pope Francis was as well, but he had kind of his dips, not dips, low below in the minority, but, from 70 to 80, something like that. And Pope Leo is more popular, and he is American. So the part of this is sort of unprecedented, how Americans and American Catholics will see what he's doing. We had a story a couple of days ago about conservative Catholics in the United States and sort of them saying, hey, people who never criticize the president, obviously Mike Johnson isn't a Catholic, but he as well, people who never say, a negative word about President Trump, where it's like, hey, this is out of line. So I think Pope Leo definitely, he's being very, cautious about his role as an American. He's been, he was kind of building up to saying criticism of the wars that have been going on, and basically saying, trying to make not focused just on the U.S. Catholic population. But yeah, I mean, I think you're really seeing conservative Catholics being pulled more because of what's going on. I mean, first of all, you've got issues like the war in Gaza, which, and Israel, that used to be something conservatives were aligned on, and now there's a lot of fractures. Same with what's going on with immigration and how it's carried out. So I think you're really seeing Pope Leo, just seeing a Pope speaking in English and knowing the shorthand, knowing the U.S. context is something we haven't seen before. So, I mean, it definitely seems like there's a lot more attention being paid to this than when it was a Pope from South America, for example.
Michelle Borstein, what a joy to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.